Welcome to another episode of Uncle Ricky's House.
Hello, how you doing? Well, welcome to another episode of Uncle Ricky's House. Today is episode number 3 in our premiere season. Season 1, episode 3. Patriotism could fuck you up. Patriotism is one of those words that end in ISM that the ISM ending, my teeth are kicking me. The ISM ending indicates that it is socially significant. Patriotism, recidivism, alcoholism, realism. They're all words that end in ISM and they all have a significant social implication. Well, patriotism is not a unique characteristic only to America. Any country can have patriots. Mexico can have patriots. They got statues to many of their patriots. England had patriots. Scotland had patriots. Chile, Venezuela, every country, any country that was autonomous, any country that had a military, any country that had a government based on anything had the potential to have patriots. Now, having the potential to have patriots, or having the potential to generate patriotism, does not entirely mean that you will produce true patriots in every sense, or in the strictest sense of the term. Let us tear this down and find out what the hell a patriot and patriotism is. Well, if we go back and use a dictionary, it says in the Oxford Language Dictionary that patriotism is the quality of being patriotic, devotion to, vigorous support for one's country. The example of the use of the word, it says a highly decorated officer of unquestionable integrity and patriotism. Well, this little blurb tells us one thing, that patriotism, according to the strictest definition, is reserved for military people. Now, if we go back to the original conception of American patriotism, if we look at the definition, if we go by the strictest interpretation of the definition, then we have to know that women couldn't be considered patriots because they weren't allowed to serve in the military. That is one problem. It may have started out as a minor problem, but as you graduate to 2022, the recognition of female military service by the United States is lacking. Just like the actual reporting of military deeds by people that were from the minority is lacking, late, behind schedule, and in the worst cases, not even in progress. Black people, Native Americans, Japanese, women of all colors have all been shorted on many and various occasions for being recognized by the country that they are patriotic to for their patriotic service, because they do not meet the qualifications of the 1776 definition of a patriot. Okay, let's keep moving right along. I'll let you meditate on that. You'll come to a conclusion and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So 1776, we've already established that that is the base, the groundwork, the foundation, the pillar, the support of our belief in what patriotism is. One concept that you have to accept, because patriotism is a mindfuck tool, and I shouldn't say it with such negativity, because there are some true patriots that they exist for the country that they live in. They exist for, in their belief, for the betterment and for the continuation of their nation and their people. Okay? That's matching the original definition of a patriot. You can even slide women in there, because there was a social change that allowed women to join military fighting forces. So now we have an indication of another theory that I have already stated. Patriotism evolves. The actual acceptance of who and what a patriot is evolves according to the social atmosphere and the combative experience. In the words of Miss Jada Pinkett, the entanglements that a nation gets into. Now, with all of that being said, what fucking difference does it make? Well, patriotism is supposed to be about love of country, love of your compatriots, love of doing the work to make your country the best that it can be. All that is fine and dandy. All of that is slicker than snot on a doorknob. But that's not what the largest percentage in 2022 of the people that are called patriots, or are assumed, not even called patriots, that assume that they are patriots doing patriotic things, is because they have molded the definition of patriot to fit their vision of what America should be. So they think that they love America, but they don't love the physically existing America. They love what they think America should be or could be. Now, everybody thinks that I'm going to take this in a direction, that's negative, but because patriotism ends in ISM and it has social significance, it has some of the characteristics of any society. There are people that live in a country every day. There are people that operate in a country every day. There are people that have no desire to live anywhere else, but they do have a desire to form the country in their image. In other words, I love being an American and I call myself a patriot, but my patriotic duty is to make America what I think it should be. A la 2022, January 6th, the insurrection, the riots at the nation's capital. A group of people of basically one political belief are unified by the big lie. That ignites their patriotism, their nationalism, that America is going to hell in a handbasket and people need to stand up to protect the rule of law and make America into what it should be. So therefore, we have thousands of people charging the damn Capitol, waving American flags alongside Confederate flags with Trump flags, talking about their patriots. Well, if patriots love their flag and you have 3 different flags, what are you being patriotic to? Are you being patriotic to the United States and just want to impose your will? Are you being patriotic to the glory and the resurrection of the South? Well, technically the South is still there. All the Confederate states are still there. They're even under the same name, in the same place. They lost no territory due to the Civil War. So, if you are being patriotic, waving the stars and bars, you're not being patriotic to the United States. Forget the flag. We're not even talking about a piece of cloth on a pole. We're talking about the concepts that are written in the Declaration of Independence. We're talking about the laws that are written in the United States Constitution. So, therefore, in your zeal, you have mentally convinced yourself that you are a patriot to an America that doesn't exist. And you want to rapidly change it, even if you have to use force, violence, and perhaps even murder your fellow American to achieve the transformation of America into what you think it should be. Now, if we take the time to look at all the patriots from January 1st, we find, just like in American society, we find that there are many, many, many different people out there. But because they are all out there at one time in a unified effort, it goes out that, look at these people being patriotic. You want to destroy the country that you are supposed to love. You want to overturn the government that your title, that you gave yourself as patriot, as a patriot. You want to tear that government down and install your acceptable form of government. Patriotism can be infected by authoritarianism, another ISM, where everybody wants to be run by one or two or a small number of people with total power. Preferably one. Preferably, in most people's minds, a male. Now, all of these things are tenets of something else that's far greater that I discussed in episode number 2. You could be a fascist. You could be a patriot. You could be a fascist. But if you're a patriot, you definitely should be a nationalist. But are you pinning your support to what really exists in the current time, in the current situation? Or are you saying America, hoping that through this confrontation, this entanglement that the country's in, that you can somehow use that to make America into your concept of what America should be, which in your mind is a better country, which in your mind makes you a better patriot. Okay, we found all that out during the Civil War because the country was one. There was 13 original colonies. They had expanded. There were more newer colonies that had come in since the Revolutionary War. The country was moving westward. The Industrial Revolution was on the cusp of beginning. Railroads and steamships were cutting the formidable distances of the world and the country down from days to hours, from weeks to days, from months to weeks. Life in general was getting better, but the country decided to break apart. The patriots in the country decided that they couldn't stay together. Even though they prayed to the same God, they went to the same schools, they fought in the same army, they saluted the same flag, they prayed at the same churches. A certain number of patriots felt that it was no longer good or no longer noble to be an American. They had to become patriotic Confederate Americans. And the only difference between the two communities, besides land and perhaps a few local oddities, these people that once were a whole nation, they fractured and became two separate nations, two separate groups of patriots, two separate groups being patriotic to basically the same principles, except for one. The Confederate States of America. The patriots from the Confederate States of America divided a whole nation and started a civil war. Brother against brother, father against son. All because they thought that it was legitimate for a white man to own a black man and work him like a piece of cattle, like an ox or a cow or a mule, in order for the white man to line his own pockets. That's what the whole South, that's what all the patriots in the South were fighting for. They called it states' rights, which was, wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth. It's like the story your 5-year-old tells you when she knows she broke the cookie jar, but she doesn't want to tell you that she broke the cookie jar because it fell when she was trying to steal it while she was standing on a chair, climbing on top of the refrigerator. She was dedicated to the cooking. Her whole life, her whole being, her whole situational awareness was dedicated to purloining a cookie. The Confederate States of America were conceived and brought into reality for the one purpose of giving white men in the Confederate States the continuing privilege to them, the continuing privilege of owning another man as a slave. So the Confederate patriots, what were they loyal to? They broke up a country with the same beliefs, the same religion, the same language, so much in common, to support evil. They were patriots to the southern states, but the southern states were conceived in evil. So therefore, the southern patriots were point blank fucking evil. Now, that is the bad part of how patriotism has evolved. Let's get out of the Civil War. Let's skip the Spanish-American War. Although there were some significant changes in the concept of patriotism, it didn't change that much from the Civil War era, post-Civil War reality. When the Union won the war and the nation was reunited physically, the South lost the war, but it did not kill the philosophy. So therefore, many of the Southern military patriots were brought back into the Union Army in all sorts of positions, put back into the uniform of the Union. They swore allegiance to the Union, but in their head, they were still aligned with the philosophy of Dixie. They were still patriots to the Confederate States, to the Confederate philosophy, but they wore Union blue. So, if we analyze that part of the story, we understand that a patriot in uniform will walk like a patriot, talk like a patriot, act like a patriot, but you will never ever be certain of what that person is a patriot to, because he wears the country's, or she wears now, 2022, the country's uniform. Bad patriotism, good patriotism. Okay, World War I, World War II. Patriotism had to evolve, and again, racism was the prime factor in that evolution. The majority white America had started the healing process. We still haven't fully healed from the Civil War. Civil War ended in 1865. It's now 2022, and we still ain't got our shit together. Come on. What the fuck is wrong with us? But anyway, America was, I'm not going to say healed. They had managed to put a Band-Aid on it, and they were functioning, because now you had the southern whites, the northern whites, they were still together. They made the national majority, but now these patriotic or wannabe patriotic motherfuckers, they had to fight with minorities by their side. Truman integrated the military, so white and blacks were fighting together, and there was always an Indian, there was always some guy that came in from another country that wanted to prove that he was a real American by serving his country, hoping that that would help him gain his citizenship faster. World War I, World War II. That's why I keep saying he, because historically there weren't that many women in positions in the military where their patriotism was really questioned. Now, World War I, World War II, Americans for the first time, they had to fight on another continent. They had fought out of the country, you know, and there were battles in Canada during the French and Indian War, during the Revolutionary War, blah, 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 blah. There was battles in Mexico during the Spanish-American War, when Spain invaded the southwestern territories in their conquest to regain all of the land that used to belong to Mexico, but was actually California now, Texas now, Arizona now. That's what the Spanish-American War. Well, not even. I'm sorry, not the Spanish. The Mexican War. The Spanish-American War was another fiasco altogether. But Santa Anna, the president and head dictator general, whatever, fascist, decided that he wanted to come and take back the territory that Mexico had ceded to the United States. So we had patriotism, but once again, it was ill-defined or not taken quite as seriously because Texas, during the time of the Alamo, wasn't even officially a part of the United States. In fact, many of the people that were actual U.S. citizens thought that they were patriotic, and they said that motherfucking crazy-ass Texas is on their own. They should have listened to the Mexicans when they said it was coming. Now, the U.S. is in different waters, fighting in strange countries, fighting on different continents, fighting the same war in multiple outside of the country locations. World War I, World War II. It's a different war. It's a different, America itself is different. So, does patriotism evolve to embrace the changes in society, to embrace the changes in the ground rules, to embrace, in the words of Jada Pinkett, the entanglement? It certainly does. It does. That's the only way patriotism will continue to exist. Patriotism in America had to change because it could not any longer be a white-black thing. Hold on. Patriotism in America had to change because the color factor was thrown completely out of whack. You had white Americans of German and Italian ancestry, French ancestry too, because you had the Vichy French, fighting the Axis. Much like in the Civil War, but with only distance and water in between, people were fighting their cousins. In some cases, they were actually fighting their brothers, even their fathers and grandfathers. Now, to be an American patriot under those conditions, to unify all these different people that had reasons not to go to war, we had to create a reason. And that reason was, once again, the old reliable standby: racism. Now, you say that America was fighting white people against white people. Yes, that's true. So how can you use racism as a tool? That was only on one side of World War II. The other side in the Pacific, we were fighting the Japanese. So racism automatically cut in to boost the patriotic belief that Americans were superior. It wasn't that Americans thought Americans were superior. Americans thought that white people were superior to anybody that wasn't white. Japanese, definitely not white. On the other side of the ocean, in the Atlantic War, in the war with the Germans and the Italians, we had to take our patriotism and put it back closer to the original concepts of 1776, because in order to vilify the Germans, we had to point out their elimination of the Jews, their lack of religious tolerance, their lack of religious freedom. We had to point out that minorities in Germany had no backing, no standing. So they suffered more than the white Aryan Germans, blonde, blue-eyed motherfuckers. Yes. And believe it or not, there was a significant population of German blacks during World War II. Now, I think I've proven that patriotism, like any other ism, has to change with society, because patriotism depends on the social condition. It depends on the nature of the entanglement, the conflict, the combat, the war. So we jump forward from World War II to Korea, and it's basically just like in the War of 1812, it's a replay of what happened during World War II. Except this time, we have to be the patriotic invaders. So we invaded a country that never took a shot at us. So that goes against the image of the patriotic good guy. We just don't fuck with people just to be fucking with them. We only fuck with you if you fuck with us. Well, North Korea did not fuck with us. North Korea only wanted to fuck with South Korea. South Korea only wanted to fuck with North Korea. But here comes the big, bad United States, full of patriotism in order to support what? Democracy. Democracy is not the country. Democracy is just a philosophy. Democracy is a part of what makes the United States the United States. But it was the biggest thing that we could latch on to justify being in Korea. Democracy has to stop communism. The fucking domino effect. Don't you know that if South Korea falls, all of Asia will eventually fall to the dreaded red scourge of communism. Well, in their case, the yellow scourge of communism. Racism 101, patriotism 101, all gets you a graduate degree in fucking fascism. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up now. Well, not the last change, but the greatest significant change for the United States as far as patriotism versus major combat. Patriotism in the face of modern entanglements. God, damn bitch. But anyway, Vietnam tended to expose all the pros and cons of American patriotism. You got a multiracial force thousands of miles from home invading, well, not invading, but basically being an allied occupier in one country while trying to invade their sister enemy country, and they all used to be a whole country. Sounds like the Civil War with the United States thrown in for special effects. Patriotism had to evolve to support the U.S. military effort through Vietnam. And one of the biggest reasons we left Vietnam in defeat was because the general population in the U.S. lost hope in winning the war. Their patriotic fervor, even though they felt that they still believed in everything that made America great, wasn't working this time. We had a bigger army, we had better trained troops, we had smarter troops. Well, I'm not going to say smarter. We had troops that had the potential for better education, put it that way. Because any country that can take a tire and turn it into everything from a pair of shoes to a fan belt for a 1943 Chevy, you got some smart people. You got some industrious people, and you got some people that are not lazy. You got some people that are probably patriotic without even knowing that they are true patriots. And you have many people that are patriotic as a form of self-defense because the government is oppressive, authoritative, and fascist. They demand loyalty from the citizens, even if that loyalty is fake, just to avoid the consequences of governmental retribution. This will kind of show why Russia, with all of its might, all of its numbers, all of its equipment, and all of its fucking nuclear devices, keeps getting their asses kicked. If the war in Ukraine goes on and Russia is able to continue its upkeep of its forces, Russia will eventually win by attrition. But they didn't win by strategic or tactical prowess. They won by the sheer force of numbers. If you take a lot and move it to a little, and then lean it into the little, as the lot presses against the little, according to the laws of physics, has to give ground, unless it's retained by something. In Ukraine, those people are retained by their patriotism. So on the surface, patriotism is a good thing. But just like in any other case, are they wearing the uniform and being patriotic to the country? Or are they wearing the uniform, being patriotic to an ideal of what they think that by fighting in this conflict, this conflagration, this entanglement, that they are true patriots? I hope I haven't really confused you, but I hope that I have straightened out a few things for you. Patriotism can be a wonderful thing. Patriotism definitely has a place in the makeup of any country. But when patriotism, just like anything else, gets out of pocket, gets yard out, it becomes a bad thing. When people try to maintain the 1776, or let me say Americans, because 1776 really don't mean shit to anybody outside of America. If Americans try to maintain the 1776 idea of patriotism, the already small number of patriots that we have, real patriots that we have, is going to shrink even more significantly. There are men and women that go out every day and put their life on the line, that fight like no others, that are unified in their belief of America. And notice I said in their belief of America. Not in their belief of America as it is, but in their belief of what it should be. Now, that goes right back to a bad thing, good thing. Tens of thousands of African Americans fought during World War II, fought during Vietnam, and are even fighting today, knowing that whenever that conflict is over or they get rotated back home, and even before they get out of the uniform, when they set the first foot back on American soil, whether it's a military installation or a private airport or boat dock or train station, the minute they set foot back on that soil, this soil, they have to realize that anything that was close to patriotism that they exemplified during the entanglement was probably not produced by their 1776 understanding of patriotism, but it was produced by the evolution of patriotism because of patriotism's ability, or an individual's ability to become patriotic to their idea of what America should be. Many black people serve knowing that they're going to get disrespected at home, knowing that even their own brothers and sisters are going to look at them sideways because you went and fought in the white man's war. What kind of fool are you? Same thing goes on in Asian culture. Same thing goes on Native American culture. Same thing goes on in any minority culture, because the realism is that America as a government is not fair to anyone. And they are especially not fair to anyone that's not white. And I'm not trying to be a black racist. I'm a man in the middle, just like my brothers and sisters, no matter what color you are, but I'm just trying to get you to understand what some of the things that may make me tick. Just like I try every day to understand as much as, or to gain as much knowledge about other cultures, other people, so I can come to a realistic, practical understanding. I serve my country. I volunteered. I spent 6 years in a sewer pipe called a fast-attached submarine. But that does not make me any more of a patriot than the guy working at McDonald's or the girl working at the counter at Krispy Kreme. I did what I had to do when I had to do. That was patriotic. But what was I being patriotic to the 1776 version, or was I being patriotic to the Uncle Ricky version? I don't think you guys even got a guess. I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 3 don't count. My patriotism was all about my conception of what America could be. Those words, we the people, equality for all men, the rule of law, blase, 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 blase. When my patriotism to the country, to the flag, to the uniform was generated by my desire to make my country live up to the pledges that they had made over 100 years ago at that time. Over 200 years ago at that time. As a statement on what they intended to be. As far as the rah-rah, mom and apple pie, America do or die, fuck that. Fuck that. I love this country because I live here. I love this country because it has the potential to do many wonderful things, including the things that they listed on those two documents over 200 years ago. And I love it despite the reality that it has become a land of political trickery, open disdainment by a leading political party. You have people sitting in the nation's capital supposedly representing the people from their constituencies, state, districts, whatever. They are supposed to be making laws to be added to the Constitution for the betterment of all those people, regardless of race, creed, color, sex, or religion. And all this one particular group of people in their patriotic fervor to create a nation in the image that they desire it to be, all they do is oppress, 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 vilify, deny, and steal. Ain't much difference between the two. And that's how patriotism survives in America. Thank you for watching Uncle Ricky's House, Season 1, Episode 3. I hope that I have given you some useful information. I don't really expect anybody to ever think like I do. I don't really expect anybody to agree like I with the things that I say or the things that I do, because realistically, I understand one thing. No matter what happens in this world, no matter what happens around me, I am one insane motherfucker. But that being said, I do love this country. But do I love it enough to be a 1776 patriot? Or do I have to become my own concept of a patriot? Well, everybody meditate on that. All my fellow people in the middle, whether you are black, white, brown, yellow, green, or blue, be safe and enjoy living in the middle. God bless America.